This video we will create a player character using enhanced input in Unreal Engine C++. We'll make both a first-person character and a third-person character. To start off, we'll make a first-person character, then convert it to a third-person camera by writing a couple lines of code. To set up enhanced input, you need to watch my setup enhanced input video. So first of all, we're gonna open up our input character class, which we created in the enhanced input video. Next, we're gonna delete all of the test functions we made. That's our test input and our test bindings inside the CPP. And on the input character, I'm going to delete the test input and test action. I'm also going to move this from here underneath generated body, just to keep things tidy. That's just my preference. And underneath generated body, we need to create a camera. So the U property, visible anywhere, meta equals, and open up brackets, allow private access equals and speech marks true. You don't have to type this meta if you're doing this underneath protected, but I'm doing this underneath private section, so I'm going to type this out. Next, we're going to create a camera, so class camera component asterisk, and we're just going to call this camera. Next, inside our CPP file, in our includes, going to include camera component, and in here we're going to do camera equals create default subobject. Inside triangle brackets, we're going to create a camera component, and we're going to name this camera by doing open brackets, speech marks, and rename. Next, we're going to set up the attachment, so camera pointer setup attachment root component, and I'm getting an error here. Oh, I spelled private access wrong. Oh, this should be U camera component. That's why I'm getting errors. Yep, now fixed it. So create default subobject uCamera component, and inside here it should be uCamera component. Finally, we're going to do camera b use pawn control rotation equals true. This is so when we move our mouse, it will move our camera. Next, we're going to create some input actions. So underneath here, I'm going to copy this U property and paste it here. Class U input action asterisk, and let's call this movement or move action. Copy paste it and change it to jump action. Copy paste it again and call this look action. This will be used for moving, this will be used for jumping, and this will be used for moving the camera. Now we're going to bind our input by doing input pointer bind action move action e trigger event, and this will be triggered affecting this object, and we need to create a new function called move. So underneath here, protected void move, and inside move we're going to have to get the input value, the const if input action value, and we're going to call this input value. We also want to do this for looking, so copy paste it and change it to look. And finally, we're going to make jump, but since it will be binary, we don't need to get any input. Control.enter to make the functions. And in here, we can copy paste this, and after the and sign, we can paste it and put a semicolon. I'm gonna copy paste this, make this look action, and it's gonna call look. Once again, gonna copy paste it and call jump action, and it's gonna call jump. Clean this up a bit. Now inside our movement, we're going to f vector 2d input vector is equal to value input value dot get f vector 2d, and that's a function, so put 2 brackets now. So whatever this is, so for example, if pressing W, this would be 1 and we'll want to move forward, or if we're pressing S, it will be -1. So we're gonna want to check if our player controller is valid. So if is valid, we need to check if the controller is valid, and if it is, we can move. So first we need to get the forward direction. To do this, we do const f rotator rotation is equal to controller and the pointer get control rotation, and it's a function, so 2 brackets afterwards. Next, we're going to do const f rotator and your rotation is 0 rotation dot yaw and 0, because we only want to access the yaw rotation. And finally, to get the forward direction, we're doing const f vector forward direction is equal to f rotation matrix, and we're going to put in the yaw rotation, and we're going to get unit axis, and we're going to want to do a axis, and we're going to want to get x. So now we have the forward direction of the player. So if we're pressing W, we want to move in this direction. We also want to get the right direction. So if we're pressing the D key, we'll be moving in the right direction. So to do this, we can duplicate this by pressing Ctrl D and change the X to your Y. I'm going to change this name to right direction. Now we're going to want to add the movement based on the input. This is very simple. We just do add movement input, and we're going to want to get the forward direction, and we're going to get input vector dot y, and we're going to want to check for the right direction. So add movement input right direction and input vector dot x. So what this does is it gets the forward facing direction, and then it gets the right facing direction, and if we're pressing W or S, it will move forwards or backwards, and if we're pressing D or A, it will move right and left depending on our input. This will return a value of 1 or -1 if we're pressing something, and 0 if we're not. So if we're pressing W, it will return 1, and if we're pressing S, it will be -1. Look is pretty similar. Inside here, we can copy paste our input vector and paste it in here. We also want to check if the controller is valid. So is valid controller, and we're gonna, instead of adding movement input, we're gonna add controller input, since we allowed control rotation to be true. So add controller yaw input to be input vector dot x, and add controller pitch input to input vector dot y. If we're moving our controller or our mouse left and right, it will affect the yaw. If we move it up and down, it will affect the pitch. Finally, the most easiest one of them all, jumping. It's already built in Unreal Engine. we're going to call a function inside a base character class, so a character, 2 colons, and we just want to jump. Make sure you have your input set up, make sure you have references, you need input actions, make sure you can edit them, and make sure you have the subsystem set up from the previous enhanced input video. Now we can close our engine and then we can compile. Now that the map has loaded, we can go into our content and we can create a player folder. I've already done so, and we can create a blueprint class by right clicking blueprint class and search up our character, and I've called it the input character. I already have this created. We open the full blueprint editor, we can see we have our camera, and we can move this up here for first person, and for third person you want to move it back here, but you'll have to make a spring arm component. I'll do that in just a second. Right now we're going to test movement. Search up enhanced input. Well, make sure you've clicked in the root here. Move action, we don't have any, so we're going to create them right now. So inside our input folder, I'm going to move this inside our player class by dragging it over here and clicking move here. So in here we have some actions. We can delete the test action, and we're going to create new input action, and put the input action move, duplicate that, input action look, duplicate again, input action dot underscore jump. I do IA for input action. If we open up movement, we're going to want to set this to axis 2D vector, save that and close. For the look, we're going to want to do the same, change the value type to axis 2D, save and close. Jump, we're going to want to keep this as a bool since we're only going to have one input for that. Inside our main mapping context we created, we're going to add a new mapping. It's going to be our movement. We're going to create 4 different inputs. It's going to be W and S. So W will have a modifier called swizzle input axis values. S will have swizzle input axis values as a modifier as well. But it'll also be negate, which means it'll be a negative number. D and A. D will be left as default, and A will just have a negative value. So we can save that, and if we collapse all of this, we can add a new mapping called look. And if we click this and go onto mouse, it'll be mouse X, Y, 2D axis. We'll also want to create a new modifier called negate. And this keeps expanding. We can just close this when it does. And if we expand this, we only want to make the y-axis negative. Otherwise we'll have inverted controls. Finally, we create a new action, jump. And this will just be a spacebar. And we don't need to affect anything. Save this and close. Open up a player blueprint. Search up for input, enhanced input. Set up our mapping context. Our move action should be input action move, jump, jump, and look should be look. Compile, save, and inside here, add to the project. We can do basic, player start, drag and drop that in. And make sure our input game mode is set up, which I did enhanced input. If we press play, you can see we can move our mouse, we can jump, and we can move. So this is first person, but what if I want a third person character? Well, inside C++, over here, if we copy paste the U property above our camera and create a new class, use spring arm component, asterisk, and we're going to call this spring arm. inside here, above the camera, is spring arm equals create default sub object use spring triangle brackets use spring arm component, and we're going to call this spring arm. We also have an include file we need, so this will be include game framework spring arm component .h. And now we can do spring arm create default spring arm pointer setup attachment root component, and we're going to spring arm be use pawn control rotation to true, and we're going to edit the camera. First of all, we're going to delete this, use control rotation, and instead of the root component, we're going to do spring arm. Now if we close the editor, we're just going to compile. Now we can open up our BP player and open full blueprint editor. You can see underneath the spring arm is our camera. I'm going to reset the camera position and nothing else is changed. If you want, you can adjust the distance. We're also going to need a mesh. In the link in the description, it'll bring you to a website called Mixamo. You can search for animations and characters you're just going to want to download, and for example we can do walk animation, and you can see we have walk animations, and you're going to want to select in place, and you're going to want to download by pressing download. I already have mine downloaded to save time, so I'm going to create a model folder and I'm going to drag in the model. I don't have any animations set up, but if you'd like me to teach you how to use animations, let's say 100 likes and I'll tell you how to set that up. But for now, click on mesh and select the model you selected. Make sure it is facing the arrow, and if we compile and play, you can see we can move and we can walk about. That's all. You know how to make both first person and third person. I hope you learned something. If you'd like, check out my Zero to Hero series using Unreal Engine C++. If you'd like to get a more understanding of how to use C++ and make a fully playable game. Thanks for watching.